This is Rusty with Conquering Mountains Podcast, and I wanted to share an insight with you today. I started about 3 months ago when I came out here one morning and I was just really enjoying the outdoors and just worshiping and showing God my full attention. And He showed me my pear tree. Now, what's different about this pear tree this year is that it hasn't produced any fruit at all. And so you can see how big it is, and then so it's had plenty of time to produce fruit. But this year was the first time that any of the fruit had come on it, and it reminded me of a parable that I had read this week about a man who owned a vineyard and had planted a fig tree in that vineyard. So the parable goes like this: a man owns a vineyard, and he plants a fig tree in it. And there is the vine dresser who is to take care of the vineyard. And so when this man who'd been coming every year for 3 years, he comes upon the fig tree and it hasn't produced any fruit. And he looks at the vine dresser and says, "Look, you need to cut this thing down because it's not producing any fruit. It's wasting ground when we could be using it for something else." And so the vine dresser says to the landowner, "Hey, let me dig around it, let me put some manure on it, let me cultivate it, and then if it doesn't, fine, we'll cut it down. But let's give it one more year." So I want to address this parable over a few things, and I want to come up with a challenge in a way that helps maybe you get through that next step in conquering your mountain. So first, let's talk about the landowner, right? So this was a guy who owned a vineyard but was allowing someone else to cultivate it. And he kept going back year after year to this fig tree that wasn't producing any fruit. The problem with all that is he didn't understand the fig tree. So a fig tree generally takes between 3 and 5 years in order to produce fruit. But it wasn't. So all he knew was, I planted this, I have done what I needed to do, and it's like, it's not doing anything for me, so cut it down. Now, one of the things that I want you to know is that, there's going to be people in your life who are wanting to cut you down, who don't see the value in you because you haven't produced fruit for them. But that's a challenge because you have tremendous value. Right now, I just got off of a phone call with people from across the United States, and what I found was that every person wants to feel loved and valued, and sometimes they lose sight of why they're valued or how they're valued. And so I want to share something with you. There's a psalm that talks about that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. It's not just that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. I want to talk about being knitted, right? So when I think about, a grandmother who is sitting down and that lost art of knitting a sweater or knitting a blanket, right? So whenever grandma sits down, she's got a ball of yarn and she's picking it up and she's going to make something with it. Now, at the beginning, it doesn't look like anything, but she knows in her mind exactly what she's creating. Well, that's what God does, right? So one of the things that is the problem right now is that we are in a society that doesn't value the beginning of life, so it's like it's not important. But I'm going to tell you how important the very beginning is, because Psalm says that God sat there and He knitted me in the womb of my mother. He knitted you in the womb of your mother. Like, He didn't just form you, He knitted. Like, so he's sitting there, and the intricacies of your arms, of the ligaments and the tissue, it's not just this bundle of mass or something that lives inside of a mother's womb. It is wonderfully and fearfully made. It was thought of in the mind of God well before you came out of the womb. He knitted you. He thought about you. And so the challenge today is going to be, it's like, I know that there's probably a point in your life where you may not have been valued. And I want you to take just a moment. I want you to reflect on this question. When was the last time I felt loved? Now that's an important question, because prior to today, you may not have remembered the last time you felt loved. And I'm going to talk about that manager for a second, the one that wants to cut you down. I'm not saying remove that person from your life. What I'm saying is, I want you to take right now the idea that lives inside of your head that keeps repeating itself. It's on replay. It's on that loop that I'm not X, or I don't feel Y. And I want you to take that and I want you to write it out. I want you to own it, but when you write it out, I want you to write it in very small letters, lowercase, right? And then right beside it, I want you to write out in uppercase, all capitals, the reason why you're loved. I don't want you to write out something you feel. I want you to find a truth. Because the little letters, those are the feelings. And the ones in all capital, that's your truth. So I want you to write that out, and every time that play in your mind that loops, I want you to think on and replace the lowercase with the uppercase. So that's the challenge today, and we're going to come back with some more next week. So I promised you that I would post something every, on a Tuesday and a Friday. I'm a little late, but I wanted you to have this now because I think it's vitally important that you know who you are and whose you are and how you were created. So look, have a great day. Love you guys. You're blessed, and we'll see you next time on Conquering Mountains.